Thanks for joining us on our streaming service for your First Alert Avalanche Report. I'm your First Alert meteorologist, Callie Zanandri, and joining me is the Deputy Director of the Colorado Avalanche Information Center, Brian Lazar. Brian, there is going to be some great powder heading into the weekend, but you are still urging backcountry users to remain cautious despite a drop on the avalanche danger scale.
Yeah, and the good news is that we've got continuing improving conditions with respect to stability. You can see from our homepage map that we've got widespread areas of moderate avalanche danger. This is level 2 out of 5, and this is even a safer moderate than what we had in many parts of the state even a week ago, because there's a range of conditions within each danger rating. So we're now in kind of the mid to lower end of moderate danger. This is good. We're even going to see more green creep onto the map, which is low danger or generally safe avalanche conditions. And the reason for this is quite simple, as this graph demonstrates. This is showing the number of large avalanches per day. When I say large, I'm talking about avalanches that are big enough to bury, injure, or kill a person. You can see over 2 weeks, we have this steady decline in the number of avalanches that reach this size. This is what's leading to this is indicative of improving stability and decreasing avalanche hazard. So we have less and less slopes that are capable of producing dangerous avalanches, and even on those slopes, it's getting a little bit harder to trigger them. But if you do, they're actually still quite big and destructive.
Like you mentioned, while avalanche danger across most of the state has dropped to moderate, 2 of 5 level for the first time in weeks, why do more people die as the danger becomes more moderate?
Yeah, it's a little bit counterintuitive, but most people end up dying in avalanches at either moderate or considerable avalanche danger, which is right in the middle of the avalanche danger scale. And the reason for that is at the very low end of the scale, avalanches are just very unlikely, so most slopes are safe from avalanches. At the high end of the scale, avalanche conditions are so dangerous that most people are simply avoiding avalanche terrain. The signs of instability are so in your face that people really get the message that conditions are very dangerous. It's when things kind of quiet down and you don't have these obvious signs of instability like shooting cracks, natural avalanche activity, loud audible collapses, that you have to start making decisions on which terrain to travel into and which not. And so conditions get a little bit trickier to make travel plans appropriate for the current conditions. And this is why people often get into trouble in moderate and considerable avalanche danger. And while we're at the low end of kind of that dangerous middle of the scale, we still have slopes producing dangerous avalanches, even if the likelihood of those avalanches has gone down quite a bit in the last week. But here's some examples of just over the last week of what the avalanches look like. So you can see that there are fewer and fewer slopes where you're going to get avalanches like this to release. But if you do, the consequences have really not diminished that much at all. Here's our last large human-triggered avalanche from the Central Mountains just west of Crested Butte from just a couple days ago. And this image is really illustrative of the kind of terrain features we want to warn people about, which are, open, wind-loaded slopes with steep convex rolls and thin variable snow cover. And here's a forecaster of ours which did a snowpack test right adjacent to this close call avalanche. And you can see that it's taking a little bit more force on the snowpack test to get the block to release, but when you do, it pops out in quite dramatic fashion. And so it's wind drifted snow, which is really driving the danger. We had a lot of wind this last week. It moved a lot of snow for anyone who's around looking at the peaks over the last several days. And what this has done is just added to our problem of terrain features like this, where you can see the big broad ridge in the middle, which has been scoured from all the wind, but the bowls on either side have big, fat, plump pillows of wind-drifted snow, and you can even see the avalanche on the right-hand side of the image. If we can avoid these types of wind-loaded terrain features, we can stay safe on most other slopes. And so if we can avoid these thin, rocky, variable depth snowpack areas, you can avoid avalanches like this. I know we've been showing big terrain features in the Alpine, but we did have a close call in Rocky Mountain National Park, and it does point out that even small slopes can be dangerous in the wrong terrain feature. This is triggered from a summer trail on a short but very steep slope below this cliff band, and this caught and partially buried 2 snowshoers. So we want to make sure that people are aware that even small slopes in terrain traps or terrain features which can exacerbate the outcomes of even small slides can be dangerous. And by that, we're generally meaning things that would wash you into trees or would pile up snow very deeply, very quickly, like ravines and gully features.
Brian, has the recent stretch of extremely cold temperatures changed avalanche concerns at all?
You know, it has because the cold period was so pronounced and it lasted for several days. And what this has done is that in many low elevation, sheltered areas, it has weakened the snowpack to the point where it is now weak from top to bottom. And so we're starting to see sloughing in all of the weak snow. And you can see most of these sloughs are going to be small, but like in this image and in this next image, you can imagine if you were in steep or continuously open terrain, one, these can gain enough volume to be dangerous by themselves, but can also be dangerous if they wash into terrain traps, and like in this example, getting washed into trees, which is often a source of pretty bad trauma. And if you get washed into things like gullies and ravines, this snow can pile up pretty deeply, pretty quickly.
Now, more snow is on the way this weekend, really favoring the northern mountains. How will this impact conditions?
Yeah, and I'll just show what that's going to look like. You know, the forecast models have moved the heavier snow really just to the northern mountains, as you said. So we're looking at areas that are north of Steamboat and the Park Range and the very northern portion of the Front Range that might see enough snow that we get danger to start bumping back into considerable or level 3 avalanche danger by the end of the weekend. But for the rest of the state, we just don't have enough snowfall to move the needle. And so we're going to continue on this slow, gradual decline. It's a great weekend to get out there and recreate. Temperatures are going to warm back up again. And as long as you avoid those really dangerous wind-loaded slopes that we showed, there are plenty of safe slopes that you can recreate on.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Brian, and we'll see you here next week for your First Alert Avalanche Report.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.